Hey friends, and welcome back to the College Essay Guy podcast. So in case you missed it last time, we're right now in a series called Inside the Personal Statement Process. And this is episode 2. If you're just tuning in, this is a series that takes you behind the scenes as I work one-on-one with a student named Alisha, who is a current high school senior applying to college right now. In the most recent episode, we got to know Alisha a little bit through her brainstorming and outlining. And then I shared a few notes about how to maybe strengthen her outline. In this episode, we pick up where we left off. This is Alicia's second draft. So we read it through aloud, and then I talk to her a little bit about trimming, and not like trimming words, but how she can focus on a particular idea, or as I say, value in the session, and how that can help her find her focus and then figure out what to trim. We also talk a little bit about how to align the insights that you have in your paragraphs with the examples. Whether you're a student working on your essays right now, a parent who's maybe guiding from the sidelines, or a counselor who does this every dang year with students, I hope you'll find this conversation useful. Hi, Alisha. Welcome back.
Hi, it's nice to be back.
So, how's writing coming along?
I think it went pretty good. I like that I focused a lot on my outline a lot more than I did on the first draft. And I kind of spent a lot of time like filling up everything that like we talked about. And then I went ahead and like worked on the draft. So I think the structure is a lot better than what my first draft was. The only thing is that it's like pretty long. So I do want to like, I guess I need help on like cutting down words and stuff.
Trimming. Great. We'll work on that. I'm curious around outlining. What did you notice around outlining? And I'm also curious, do you tend to be an outliner or not so much?
I think I don't. I'm not really an outliner. I kind of outline in my brain and then I think I got it. So then I just like go for it. But yeah, I guess last week we were looking at the essay, I feel like it was a little messy and the structure wasn't there. But this time, like after outlining, the structure like definitely is there and it makes a lot more sense. So I think outlining is the way to go. Definitely.
I say this because I'm asking about this because I wouldn't call myself like a natural outliner. I think especially when I was like in high school and college, it took me until like getting through college to realize how awesome outlining can be.
Yeah.
Because when I do it, it's like I almost think of this as like, if I don't outline, I'm sort of starting to cook without all the ingredients. I might have said that to you last time, so forgive me, but it feels like, okay, now I've got more ingredients, so it's going to be like a richer soup or something like that.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
What was it like going into your new draft, having this like more robust outline? Like, what was the writing process like? Was it different?
It definitely was. I think I normally have like a lot of trouble like starting the essay and like figuring out like what sentences to write and like how to actually begin. But this time I wrote little like intros and like sentences and just like snippets of what I think should be included in the essay. So when I was writing, I kind of just like pulled it from that and then I like had like a good idea of like what to do.
I love that. Yeah, it sounds like you were kind of already starting to write it in like small ways, even before you like sat down to write.
Yeah.
And I think that that's sometimes when people are going to outline, they're thinking that they're like preparing to write, but you're actually doing the writing because you're doing the thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Neat. Cool. Okay. So we'll work on cutting it. Are there any other concerns or anything that you want to say, before we read it aloud?
I think for like one of the paragraphs, I don't know, I guess we could like say it and then I'll, I don't know, include. But yeah, like some of the anecdotes, I wish that they would include all the values that we like picked out in the outline. And so I tried to like do that as much as possible, but I'm not sure if it's really there. And I might like even be able to like cut out some of the sentences or like insights that I added because I'm not sure if the values are like in the actual story that I wanted.
Okay, cool. Great. And the reason I'm asking you that is like, and this is like kind of a side note to like counselors or essay coaches reading, is like, I think it's really important before someone shares a piece to like say the things about it, because we're often thinking them. And it's like, if we say them first, one, it helps me orient to like how you're thinking about the piece. But two, I think it does this sort of like, I don't know, like relaxation thing. It's like, okay, I've said the things. even before you said the thing, even before you, Ethan, said the things. So, you know what some of the potential issues are, but it also mostly is helping me see like how you're making sense of things. But I'm sensing like a kind of like, it's almost like a confidence or something in this draft, or like there's more confidence or something.
Yeah, I'm definitely happier about it than.
Okay, cool. Well, let's check it out. So do you want to read it aloud and then we'll just go from there?
Okay, yeah. So one more thing, I didn't change my intro and conclusion because when I was writing, I started out writing the body paragraphs with all the outlining that we had. And then at the end, I realized that the intro and conclusion from the last draft kind of still worked. So I spent a little less time on those and I just kept the same ones.
Awesome. All right, let's jump in. Let's hear it.
Okay. Winter 2, wherever the road takes us. That's what I called it. Every weekend, my family would toss camping gear into the car and we'd set off into the unknown without much of a plan. Instead of all-inclusive resorts, we did road trips and even slept in our car. I loved it. It was freedom. Somewhere along the way, I started collecting small jars of sand from each place. Each jar now sits on my shelf, but they really hold the lessons I carried forward. My sand from the Imperial Valley sand dunes shifts in the jar. I've learned that dunes are never static, they're always moving. Just as the dunes are shaped by invisible winds, my path is shaped by a desire to understand, to dig deeper, and to question the world around me. My curiosity doesn't always lead to answers, sometimes it leads to better questions. As the only high schooler in a neuroscience lab, I didn't have the answers, but I never stopped wondering. Countless trials to isolate the hippocampus from a tiny rat brain showed me the scientific method is not about instant success, but about perseverance. Each ineffective try brought me closer to the goal. Each mistake became a lesson and a plan for the next attempt. This mindset carried into my AP Computer Science class, where collaboration was rare but so necessary. To solve this problem, I helped redesign the curriculum into a team-based game that encouraged communication and teamwork for future CS students. As one of the few girls in the class, leadership was daunting, but I've learned to make room for every voice, including my own. Curiosity isn't just observation, it's the courage to question, to stand firm in uncertainty, and to keep experimenting until understanding takes shape. Whether I'm in the desert, a classroom, or a lab, I want to keep learning and help others do the same. My sand from Yosemite is coarse and rocky, like the terrain where I collected it. One early morning there, I found an injured bird, called the ranger station, and waited with it in my hands. Its fragile heartbeat reminds me that empathy begins with quiet attention. It's a lesson I carry into my mentorship program that I founded, but the lessons extend beyond the students themselves. After each session, one of my students' mothers, an immigrant who barely spoke English, would make tea for me and share her worries about her daughter. Listening and encouraging her each week showed me how nurturing begins with empathy and grows through trust. To be a nurturer is to have active faith in someone's capacity to grow. I believe there's so much unseen value in the world waiting to be uncovered, and sometimes a few supportive words are enough to unlock it. By helping others realize their strength and creating spaces where they feel empowered, I hope to make a difference. Through my vibrant orange sand from Antelope Canyon in Arizona, I find inspiration that reminds me of the vividness and possibility in life itself. I see these colors echoed in my life. Creativity has always been my way of expressing and understanding who I am. Whether decorating my room, covering my phone and laptop with collages of my favorite things, or experimenting with fashion and jewelry, I use art to collect and share the many layers of my identity. Even as I obsess over how circuits fire in the brain, I find equal fascination in how colors and patterns evoke emotion in a person. For me, creativity nourishes and balances my analytical side, making me more complete. My imagination encourages me to see not just what it is, but what could be. The vibrant colors on my palette reflect the millions of colorful plans in my head, hopes, and dreams for the future. My creative energy is what gives life to all other parts of me, helping me imagine a future full of both beauty and meaning. The sand from Pakistan is the color of apricots, soft and warm like the people I met there. Being Pakistani is an identity I've been raised with my whole life because it's where my father's family is from. When I visited northern Pakistan, I was in awe of the beauty of the land, but more than that, what struck me more was the people I met there. Even though my Urdu accent was laughable at times, the locals never made me feel like a tourist. While exploring, I noticed apricot trees all around, and each one had a blanket under it. When I asked what they were, the people told me it's for anyone to pick from the trees and eat freely. I was shocked that even with the few resources, no one went hungry. Though they had little wealth, the land provided all they needed, and they were happy. It showed me that making a community better doesn't always require grand gestures. I carry that spirit wherever I go, welcoming new students, inviting collaboration, and creating spaces where everyone feels they belong. The sand from Pakistan reminds me that connection itself is a form of abundance. When others look at my shelf, all they see are jars of sand. When I look at it, I see tangible proof of what I carried forward in these experiences. My curiosity, empathy, creativity, and culture in every situation. These trips were never just about the destination. Watutu started as a phrase to get my family excited for the journey ahead, but it has become my motto for the way I see the world, a reminder that anywhere can be extraordinary when I bring openness, imagination, and care.
Lovely. What do you think? How do you feel just hearing that new draft?
I'm kind of happy with it. I think I like it.
Yeah, cool. What do you like about it?
I like that I really like the structure that I started with sand for every paragraph and then talk about an experience while traveling that shows these traits, like kind of like hinting at it. And then I like go into like how I see that in my life. And then, yeah, I feel like it represents like all the different sides of me with like each paragraph. And yeah, those are my favorite parts about it.
Love it. Yeah. Is there anything that you feel like needs work or you feel like you have questions about besides the trimming?
One question I had was, I feel like the Pakistan paragraph like might be like, I don't know if you feel like that, but it might be like out of place because I feel like it doesn't really go with the whole road trip thing that I was going with. And yeah, I was just wondering if like we should keep that in or not.
Yeah. I guess the question I would ask you is, does this feel like an important part of you, of your life, of who you are?
I think it definitely does, but I don't know. I was also seeing like with the supplementals, a lot of the questions are like about culture and like identity in that way. And I was thinking like maybe I could expand on this essay on like the Pakistan part for another essay instead of keeping in my personal statement. If I'm also like tight on the word count.
Mm-hmm. So just remind me real quick, what's one of the early schools that you're really excited about that you're targeting?
So I think the number one for me would be Columbia. That's like the top one.
Great. Okay.
So Columbia's got a huge range of supplemental essays. So let me go through them really quickly. I just pulled them up here. And I'd love to just say which ones I think, based on what you're wanting to communicate about cultural background, which ones might be a good candidate or which one might be a good candidate. So prompt 1 asks you to basically just, list 100 words max, what are the texts, resources, and outlets that have contributed to your intellectual development? Now, you could weave in stuff connected to cultural background if you wanted to, but it's probably not going to be specifically in the way that you're talking about it so far. Prompt 2 says, tell us about an aspect of your life so far or your lived experience that's important to you and describe how it's shaped the way you would learn from and contribute to Columbia's multidimensional and collaborative environment. Now, that one seems like a really good candidate, and I'll come back to that one in just a second. Prompt 3 says, at Columbia, students representing a wide range of perspectives are invited to live and learn together. Please describe a time when you did not agree with someone and discuss how you engaged with them. Now, in general, I could see that working for, somebody talking about cultural differences, but it seems to not be, exactly the thing that you're talking about here. Prompt 4, basically they're saying it's important to us to understand how people navigate through adversity. Please describe a barrier or obstacle you faced and discuss the qualities, skills, or insights you've developed as a result. Again, in another context, I could say bringing in cultural background, but not exactly, in the way that you're kind of going for it here. And then the other one they have is like, why are you interested in attending Columbia? And then, what attracts you to your preferred areas of study at Columbia? So that's like a why major. And then there's a separate one for engineering. But back to prompt 2 for a second. Tell us about an aspect of your life so far or your lived experience that is important to you and describe how it has shaped the way you would learn from and contribute to Columbia's multidimensional and collaborative environment. Now, I could see you saving this part of yourself for this particular essay, but it's just 150 words. You could get some depth, but not a ton in 150 words. I could see you mentioning cultural background, Pakistani or Colombian or both, in your personal statement, and expanding on this part of yourself in this supplemental essay in a way that I feel wouldn't necessarily be redundant, but that would really be adding something, I think, to your application that isn't already in your personal statement.
So I could see you saving this aspect of your background for this essay, but it's so short, it's 150 words, that I think even if you did bring it into your personal statement, I think you could still bring in cultural background and make it even more about opportunities at Columbia that you'd be excited to engage with. So I'm holding it as like a strong maybe of like still bringing it in. So what I'd love to do is try and see if we can potentially trim these other paragraphs so that we could bring in this other aspect of you. And if we feel like it's forcing it or something like that, then we can let it go and you can be sure to weave it into maybe this other essay for Columbia. How does that sound?
Definitely. Yeah,
Okay,
that makes
great.
sense.
So let's go back. I think the opening is working well still. And so I'd love to just help you focus and dial in these paragraphs. And the way that I want to help you trim is rather than like suggesting sentence cuts or word cuts, I want to actually just help you focus in on what is the main thing that you want the reader to get from each paragraph. And this is a side note to students and yes, essay coaches and counselors, is I think this is a really good way to trim. So if we can go, okay, in this paragraph, I want to X, or I want to like X, and if there's room, I want to X plus Y. And that'll help us figure out what to trim. So let's talk about the first body paragraph where it talks about, it says, my sand from the Imperial Valley dune shifts in the jar. So what is the main, if you had to focus on like a value or a role that you want to communicate in here, what would you say it is?
Definitely curiosity and like a little bit of like scientist.
Yeah, great. So curiosity plus a little bit of scientist. So let me read the beginning again. My sand from the Imperial Valley dunes shifts in the jar. I've learned that dunes are never static. They're always moving. Just as the dunes are shaped by invisible winds, my path is shaped by a desire to understand, to dig deeper, and to question the world around me. So there's some different stuff in there that's like, I could see hinting at curiosity, but it could be that there's a little room in here to trim just because these paragraphs are going to end up being so short.
Mhm.
There could be a way that it focuses even sooner on curiosity. And I know those are just like two pretty short sentences, but I'm just going to mark that as like trim ?
Okay.
So the next sentence, you say, my curiosity doesn't always lead to answers. Sometimes it leads to better questions. Okay, great. And now we see the example. As the only high schooler in a neuroscience lab, I didn't have the answers, but I never stopped wondering. Countless trials to isolate the hippocampus from a tiny rat brain showed me the scientific method is not about instant success, but about perseverance. Okay, so perseverance is like bringing in another value here, which isn't necessarily bad, but if I'm trying to like help you dial in and focus on curiosity, I wonder if this could confuse the reader and be like, oh, are we talking about perseverance now?
Mhm.
Just because there's a way that it seems like it's sort of transitioning to a new value. Let's read the next part. Each quote unquote ineffective try brought me closer to the goal. Each mistake became a lesson and a plan for the next attempt. Now, what I see you doing, or what I sense you're doing here, is you're showing that the benefit of your curiosity led you to work hard, which led to like new lessons. Is that right? Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This mindset carried into my AP computer science class, where collaboration was rare, but so necessary. So here's another value that's coming up. It's collaboration.
Mm.
By the way, all these are great things to talk about, but as I'm a reader trying to figure out what's the main thing here, it might be like they go, oh, it's curiosity. And then they go, wait, maybe it's perseverance. And then they go, but maybe it's collaboration.
Mm.
To solve this problem, I helped redesign the curriculum into a team-based game that encouraged communication and teamwork. So this is all awesome, great values, but new ones, communication and teamwork. There's also sort of like, now it's about the benefits of collaboration. As one of the
Yes.
few girls in the class, leadership, new value, was daunting, but I've learned to make room for every voice. So that's kind of like inclusion, including my own. And then it comes back to curiosity. Curiosity isn't just observation. It's the courage, new value, to question, to stand firm in uncertainty, awesome new value, and to keep experimenting, new value, until understanding takes shape. And then you finish the paragraph with, whether I'm in the desert, a classroom, or a lab, I want to keep learning and help others do the same. Now, by the way, I love this last sentence because I think it can help land, the paragraph. But as I read all that, like, what are you noticing?
There's definitely a lot of new values. And I think that for some of them, especially the AP computer science one, I think what I tried to do is rely like too much on like the real story of what it was, which is like I was trying to show problem solving by saying like, oh, the problem was there was no collaboration and I fixed the problem. But instead I brought in like all these values. And I think I could change the story a little bit if I want to keep that like story in, to kind of just focus on like there's a problem, I fixed the problem, so that it's more like straight to the point.
And if you were to do that, I think so. There's a problem solving is sort of like what I hear is the value there. I wonder if the value, and it doesn't have to be, but if the value that you're starting this paragraph with is like curiosity, and you're really wanting to show that,
Mhm.
I would say just if that's what you're sort of anchoring us around, then I would go like sort of keep that in your head, like almost like Post-it note on your, like literally a Post-it note, or just like, okay, we're going curiosity here. And I would just make sure that curiosity is like firmly established.
Right.
If you want to shift to a new value or a new thing, I would say just keep it in your mind that like either somehow connect it back to curiosity, or just go in addition to curiosity, like here's another thing, so that we know that we're on to the new one.
I see.
And what I did, dear reader, you can't see this, but I just highlighted all the places where Alisha named the values. So again, you've got curiosity that we start with, and then you've got perseverance, collaboration, communication, teamwork, leadership, courage, experimentation, So even though I'm like vibing, I'm like, wow, this is a lot of cool stuff. I wonder if the reader might be like a little bit like, what is this paragraph about?
Yeah.
So for the next draft, I'm just going to say, like, I would love for you to anchor it in this curiosity. And then again, and I'll write this on your doc here, make sure curiosity is super clear, like locked in. Then relate the next thing to curiosity or transition to a new value. Okay. And then at the end of the paragraph, I would say, if you could come back to either curiosity or curiosity and the second thing you named, it'll kind of like have this experience of like relaxing us with like, okay, got it. This is what we're talking about. And you don't literally have to say those words, but just getting us somehow like keeping sort of, because the structure is going to kind of wander a little bit in a really lovely way. I think having these sort of anchor points can really help us. Okay. But again, as I say that to you, I don't want you to feel like, okay, Ethan said I have to name the two values at the end of the paragraph. You don't literally have to do that. It's something that you're kind of starting to do, but I kind of wanted to just like point out here.
Okay.
Okay. Let's look at the next paragraph. My sand from Yosemite is coarse and rocky, like the train where I collected it. One early morning there, I found an injured bird, called the ranger station, and waited with it in my hands. Its fragile heartbeat reminds me that empathy begins with quiet attention. Just such a beautiful, beautiful sentence. I get goosebumps just hearing that. Its fragile heartbeat reminds me that empathy begins with quiet attention. And then you say, it's a lesson I carry into my mentorship program that I founded. Lovely. I just think you've set this up so well. I know what the value is. It's empathy. There's already a little insight that you've learned about empathy, quiet attention. And you've just so elegantly transitioned into the next thing. So I really know what's coming next. But the lessons extend beyond the students themselves. Okay, you're taking it to the next level there in a really wonderful way. So what comes next isn't like sort of like some example of like empathy, because probably, we've seen those examples before in essays, but beyond the students themselves. So now I'm like kind of excited reading this. After each session, one of my students' mothers, an immigrant who barely spoke English, would make tea for me and share her worries about her daughter. Okay, cool. Now I see that I sort of am assuming that you empathize with your students, and now I'm seeing that you're even helping their family members. Listening and encouraging her each week showed me how nurturing begins with empathy and grows through trust. To be a nurturer is to have active faith in someone's capacity to grow. Nice little insight. I believe there's so much unseen value in the world waiting to be uncovered, and sometimes a few supportive words are enough to unlock it. By helping others realize their strength and creating spaces where they feel empowered, I hope to make a difference. Okay, so how do you feel about this section? What do you notice, or what questions do you have?
I think I stayed kind of on point with this paragraph. But one thing that I was a little worried about when writing it was, so like we identified the values, empathy and nurturing in the outline, or at least those were the ones I wanted to bring out. And so when I was writing about the mom story, I felt like that was a good example because it's like more common to have a story about like helping students. So I liked that it was like empathy in a different place. But I'm not sure if the nurturing side is being brought out. And I like the nurturing insights that I had at the last few sentences. But like, do you think that I'm really showing nurturing through this kind of example?
So what does nurturing mean to you?
I feel like it's bringing out like the potential in a person and helping to like grow that.
Do you
That
feel like you did this with her?
I feel like I think that talking to a person and like helping them feel reassured can be nurturing and help them out in that way. But do you think that's like shown in the story? I don't know.
Well, what I hear you say, let me say it back to you, is that nurturing is helping people. It's like unlocking their capacity or something, like helping them fulfill their potential.
Mm-hmm.
So in what sense do you feel like this was true with this student's mom? Like, was there a way that you helped unlock her capacity or you helped her realize like some greater potential?
No, not as much, I think.
Okay.
I think it was more of empathy. I don't know if it would count as like unlocking potential to like give her like strategies to help her with her daughter or like encourage that like she was doing the right thing with her daughter. I don't know if that would count, but
Potentially. Is that something, is that part of the conversation that you had, or is that like, I could have done that?
I think I did. I think I would like help her, like for example, like if her daughter was like struggling with her grades, like, and I guess some parents don't know that like it's important to check in on grades and like make sure that that's being handled. So I would like give her tips, like maybe you should check in a little more often. She's struggling with this, or like you're just doing a great job, something like that. I think would be helpful to her.
Mm-hmm. I think what you're asking me is like, is the quality that you want to show as you're articulating here, helping someone increase or recognize their capacity, is it shown the way that it's told? And I think not quite yet.
Okay.
So I would say for this section here, and it, by the way, it doesn't have to be the same insight. If you're like, well, now that I think about it, what I was really doing with this mom in our conversations was this other thing, you can switch out the insight. Okay.
Okay.
So it's a lovely insight. I think you've got an example of empathy, but maybe not necessarily, is the insight matching the details?
Right.
So I'm just going to highlight this section here and say, bring the example into alignment with the insight. And that could mean, tweak either one. You can tweak either the insight, the example, or both.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, because I think, and I also want to name that I think it's such a cool idea to go beyond, the student and to be talking about this because there's something bigger. So let me nudge you here. What is the value potentially in showing empathy, not just to the students you're mentoring, but bringing this quality into the people who are supporting the students? Like what positive impact has that had, or do you think that could have?
I think it's a really important thing to have empathy and to care for not only the students, especially if like they're neurodivergent, but like also for the parents, because they're like a lot of times I've seen that they're just so under stress and like pressure, like sometimes even more than the kid. And they like need some reassurance by someone who they think they can who they can like put some trust in. I think like they see that I'm helping their child. So I think putting or like me giving that extra support to them as well can be like really reassuring and calming to them. And I think it's important to show empathy to them as well.
Mm-hmm. What I'm marking here, because I think this could kind of up-level this paragraph a little bit, is what I'm calling like potential for insight 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just track the paragraph again. So we've got the sand, we've got this moment with this bird, and you've got this quality of empathy and nurturing. You mentioned the mentorship program, and then you mention the mom, and you're going to give some example and an insight. I think there could be some something that you say here about like what you've noticed, either about, you know, nurturing or empathy, or what you've noticed in this particular, example, like how it's sort of like, I guess what I'm saying is like, I want you to like maybe think about this question a little more and see, is there something else? And what we're looking for here is something that you'll feel like surprised by. Like as you're thinking about this and kind of teasing out like, what did I learn through this experience? Oftentimes an insight starts to feel like, we sort of sometimes in our minds, we kind of go through these things and we're like, no, not that. And we try to come up with something new and we go, no, they're probably going to know that. And then there will come this moment oftentimes where we're like, ooh, there'll come this little aha, and it usually just takes like a couple times thinking through it or trying. And then you kind of hit on something. Sometimes it's hard, by the way, to just come up on the spot with these, but it'll be the kind of thing that's like, ooh, that feels new. And that's what I want you to, I mean, it's a weird challenge that I'm giving you, but that's what I want you to strive for in between drafts 2 and 3 is see if there's something here that like, that's something new for you.
Okay. Great.
By the way, I want to name that I see you doing that already in this essay. Like, for example, the line, "Its fragile heartbeat reminds me that empathy begins with quiet attention." Like, I don't know, that feels pretty like a fresh baked insight. Was that, I don't know, was that an old thought or a new thought? Or tell me about that line.
That was definitely new. I think before I had a really long description about like Yosemite and like the quiet mountains and the vastness and everything. And then I don't know, I just saw that sentence and I was like, okay, that's what we'll lead with instead.
There we go. Yeah. And that's kind of what we're looking for here. And I know I'm asking a lot to be like, okay, I want you to do it 2 times in the paragraph. You've already done it once, but sometimes, and I see you kind of like, in these final sentences of this paragraph, kind of like searching for it. And there's like some really good stuff in here, but I want you to see if you can find the thing that's like, okay, that's the essence of the thing that I want to share. Because once you can kind of get down to the essence of it, it'll be sort of like, you'll be like, okay, I can cut these other 3 sentences because it really comes down to this.
Right. I see.
Cool. All right, let's go for the next paragraph. "Through my vibrant orange sand from Antelope Canyon in Arizona, I find inspiration that reminds me of the vividness and possibility in life itself. I see those colors echoed in my life. Creativity has always been my way of expressing and understanding who I am." So I like that you use the word creativity at the start of this sentence here. It's the 1, 2, the third sentence of this paragraph. There's a way that like leading up to it, I was a little bit confused what the value was going to be. I do like that you've got vibrant orange sand and you've got the word inspiration and vividness and colors. So it's kind of hinting at it. I really think the word creativity helps anchor it. It could be that you play with this just a little bit so that creativity is even more clearly set up by those initial sentences. I don't exactly know what that looks like, but there was some way that I was like trying to orient to what the main value was. And even as I kind of read that 1, 2, the third sentence, I was still kind of like, okay, what is it? I would say it's like, I want to say it's like, to me, it's like 75% clear. If you have time and energy, it could be maybe even clearer how that value is set up for me. By the way, when I'm giving you all these notes, I want you to take them with a grain of salt, Alisha. And if you look at that and you're like, no, Ethan, I actually think it's pretty clear, I want you to just leave it. Okay.
But I think this would definitely be good because it also helped me like cut down on words and kind of just like get to the point instead of like being like fancy schmancy with it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but I just want to like make sure that you hear that and know that. And I think you do know that, but I don't want you to feel like you have to edit everything that I tell you to edit because it could be that you're just like, yeah, it's good. Okay. All right. You say, whether decorating my room, covering my phone and laptop with collages of my favorite things, or experimenting with fashion and jewelry, I use art to collect and share the many layers of my identity. Cool. This was that other, creative side of you that we talked about last time. So far we've got creativity. When we see how that manifests itself, we've got a little example of this with this, this quality of like experimenting, and you've got art that you've mentioned, which is lovely. So the next part of the paragraph goes, even as I obsess over how circuits fire in the brain, I find equal fascination in how colors and patterns evoke emotion in a person. Okay, so we're transitioning to like some new values here. So what do you sense because you've sort of done creativity and sort of established how that shows up in your life in a few different ways. What's the new thing that you're wanting to like segue over to now?
I think I didn't try to segue. I think I tried to include a little more of like a scientific insight instead of like just focusing on like the thing, like saying like because I'm applying for like neuroscience, like even like I'm interested in neuroscience, and that also ties to like I'm also interested in like art. I don't know. I guess.
Great. Got it. Okay. So here's a simple thing about a transition. So you've got this. I'm going to reread the previous sentence so that folks hear it. Whether decorating my room, covering my phone and laptop with collages of my favorite things, or experimenting with fashion and jewelry, I use art to collect and share the many layers of my identity. So we see the creativity and we see the experimentation. Now, if the new thing you're wanting to transition to is something like related to science, one simple trick, it's like a one weird trick of transitions, is you can like name the thing that you've just been talking about in the first part of the sentence. And then the thing that you're going to talk about next, just name it in the second part of the sentence. So if you're going from like creativity, art, and then you want to transition to like science, you could just like do that in the first half and then the second half of the next sentence. What you have right now is like, even as I obsess over how circuits fire in the brain, you've kind of got science first there. I find equal fascination in how colors and patterns evoke emotion in a person. So I wonder if there's like a simpler transition here. And what are you transitioning from, just broadly speaking, from what to what?
I don't think I was transitioning. I feel like it's a little out of place in the paragraph, but because like I kind of just tried to add in like I'm also a scientific person with art, but it doesn't really make sense because I just right after that just continue like going back to like imagination, creativity.
Yeah. I'm with you. Let me read the rest of the paragraph. And I want to just ask you, because the note that I made while you were reading it for the first time was like, I think these are lovely ideas, but it goes a little bit wide in focus. So I'm not 100% sure what to focus on in the second half of this paragraph. So there are some different nominees, and I'm going to read it back to you. And I want you to just think, okay, if I were to focus on something in this paragraph in the second half, we've got creativity, experimentation. What would be like almost like a single idea to focus on? So I'll read it to you. For me, creativity nourishes and balances my analytical side, making me more complete. My imagination encourages me to see not just what is, but what could be. The vibrant colors on my palette reflect the millions of colorful plans in my head, hopes and dreams for the future. My creative energy is what gives life to all the other parts of me, helping me imagine a future full of both beauty and meaning. So there's some beautiful stuff in there. I wonder if you had to sort of like distill this, what would you like the reader to know about your creativity?
I think for like for example for the rest of the paragraphs I like talk about like the trait and then I talk about it in my life with a specific example, and I feel like with this paragraph I don't do that much except for just like a quick like list of things that I do in my life. But I think one thing that I didn't list was that like I do digital art and like draw. And I was wondering, like, maybe I can focus on that for like the next half of it instead of just like saying a bunch of insights.
Yeah, I love that you just pointed that out, that you said a bunch of insights. What it feels like it has is I think you have 1, 2, 3, 4 potential insights. And I think what I'm hungering for is like, the connection back to the example.
Right.
So I love this idea. So digital art, bringing that in, focusing more on that. And the value of focusing in on a particular example is that it'll sort of reveal to you which of the insights, if any of these, are most appropriate. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to separate the insights here. I'm just going to hit enter and put digital art ? So that maybe you do bring in a little something on digital art. And I like that that's kind of an extension of like, you're like, okay, I decorate my room, fashion and jewelry. And then, sometimes this phrase is like, but one of my favorite ways, or like a particular way, so you dive in on one, maybe you do like a couple sentences on that. And then what do you want us to know about whatever it is, your art, your creativity, digital art, and then one sentence there could like really help land the plane, I feel like.
Okay.
So let's get into this second to last that last body paragraph. And one of the concerns that you mentioned here is how you said the sand from Pakistan is the color of apricots, soft and warm, like the people I met there. The concern that you mentioned is that it doesn't fit with the road trip thing, because you were noting how each sand is connected to road trip. Now, I'll just say from where I'm sitting, I didn't necessarily mind because it's still connected to this theme of sand. And so I'll just say that like, if you want to just like connect it to sand, I think that's fine. And if you're worried that it'll seem inconsistent, one thing you could do is potentially move this example up, and you could just put it somewhere else, so that if you're worried about creating like a regularity and you're like, well, I'm self-conscious because it's like road trip, road trip, road trip, not road trip, you can just go like road trip. And then the second example, for instance, is not a road trip. And then you can just sort of tweak them so that they're not clearly around road trips, so that it's not creating that expectation in the reader and not seeming like an outlier.
Okay.
Okay. So let's assume that there's something tweaked here that is either, that's making it okay. We'll just put it that way. That there's something that's made it less, that's connecting just clearly to sand. And then rather than read it, I'm going to just ask you, before we even reread the paragraph, if you had to think about what is a core value or a main thing that you want them to get about your Pakistani identity, what would you say it is?
I think it's community and what else? I feel like it sounds like a little bit of empathy, but it's also it's kind of like being okay with less, maybe.
Interesting. Being okay with less. I'm going to write that down. Cool. Now, the value, by the way, for anybody listening, I don't hold that you need to like stick to one value per paragraph. I just think that when you're cutting, it can help you sort of filter between like stuff to like for sure keep and stuff that could maybe be cut. Okay. So I know, and it's also kind of like a lot of pressure sometimes to identify like one single thing. Sometimes it wants to wander a little bit. I'm just holding, Alisha, that these paragraphs and the way your writing style comes through, like there is going to be a little bit of wander in a lovely way. The way that road trips wander, the way that, sand kind of, spreads. So, there even could be something that you mentioned at some point about, the wandering nature, or I don't know, maybe somehow the form matches the, the content or vice versa. But I think like the reason I looked at, so let's focus on community as we start to read this paragraph. And I want you to hear the parts where you feel like it is setting up and connected to community and the parts where it's doing that less so. Okay. So being Pakistani is an identity that I've been raised with my whole life because it's where my father's family is from. When I visited northern Pakistan, I was in awe of the beauty of the land. But more than that, what struck me more was the people I met there. Even though my Urdu accent was laughable at times, the locals never made me feel like a tourist. While exploring, I noticed apricot trees all around, and each one had a blanket under it. When I asked what they were, the people told me it's for anyone to pick from the trees and eat freely. I was shocked that even with few resources, no one went hungry. Though they had little wealth, the land provided all they needed, and they were happy. It showed me that making a community better doesn't always require grand gestures. I carry that spirit wherever I go, welcoming new students, inviting collaboration, and creating spaces where everyone feels they belong. The sand from Pakistan reminds me that connection itself is a form of abundance. Okay, what do you notice?
It's not too much community. I think there's maybe like 2 sentences of community. A lot of it is not insights, but I think like just description. And yeah, I think I could change some sentences to be a little more focused on the community of the place.
Yeah, I'm going to highlight, it's from the sentences, let's see, 1, 2, 3. It's like the third sentence, those few ones in there, when you talk about visiting, the beauty, your accent, and then seeing the apricot tree. So there are a few things that come in before you talk about, and by the way, if you had if you had more words, you could totally do this. But yeah, I really love this insight, by the way. I think that speaking to this particular thing that you notice, which you said, how did you say this? Like, what was this sort of sub value? It's like not community, but it's like, what is this aspect? What was the community able to do?
They were able to be okay with less, I think. So
okay. So let's just highlight that for a second. Is there any way that you've seen that anywhere else in your life?
Well, I think that might be like one of that was the main theme of the going on a road trip with like sleeping in the car and things like that. I really see it in my own family and how we're fine with just sleeping in the car and like wearing one like pair of clothes for the whole weekend. And I think like we are our whole, my family's just okay with having less, I guess.
I love this. I love this. I want to just nominate that as a potential thing that you could bring in here. And I'm just going to highlight the rest of the paragraph and use the words "my family too," because I think it could be a really cool way of pointing to something personal and to some extent vulnerable. I think vulnerability doesn't have to be, grand gestures of like, giving up your deepest, darkest secrets, but just talking about like your family culture.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hearing this like as part of like Pakistani culture, but also like, this is the way that we, and there might be a couple examples like you've given of that in your life. And I think that's such a cool quality to imagine bringing that to a community, to like a college campus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah, really cool. So I want to also name that you're so good with insights. I think one of your challenges is going to be like not putting all the insights, like, because there's so many good ones here that I'm like, ooh, it's so close. But because there are a few of them, it sort of has me foggy around like the big takeaways.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to name that I think that'll maybe be a challenge for these drafts, because you're good at coming up with different options for what the takeaway could be.
Okay.
So let's go back, and I want to just sort of track what we've talked about so far. And I don't know that you need to mess with the opening too much. I think you could trim it a little bit. I see your note here that says another hook idea. I would say for now, and because one of your deadlines is coming up really soon, I would just focus on the trims based on what we talked about. And I would just trim a few words from the intro and the conclusion. And I think they're pretty good, especially for the short deadline that you have coming up.
Okay.
If you trim the other paragraphs and you're like, okay, I'm feeling really good about it, and you want to go back, you have a new idea, of course, do it. But I think that for this next draft, let's focus on the body paragraphs.
Okay.
So we're still working from, so go ahead.
I was just wondering, how many drafts does it typically take students to like have an essay that they like really mess with?
I would say somewhere between 5 and 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. 5 is like, if you can get it to 5, like it's probably going to be pretty solid. Not everybody needs 10 drafts, but like some students really love to like, refine. I have a feeling that it's not going to take you as many, in part because I think you have a facility with, first you're sort of like, you have an understanding of the way this form is working and the elements you're bringing them in, meaning the values, the examples, and the insights, and you're pretty good with insights. So I think that what sometimes takes longer for students between like drafts 5 and 8 is like coming up with those insights. Right now, you have like 3 insights and you just need to like pick one or find the one that like correlates to your example that you really like.
Okay. And then, so like for when I was working on the second draft, I didn't look at my first draft at all. I think you said that like normally helps. So you have to take your first draft lightly. So for the next draft, do I like do it based off of this draft, or do I also kind of like don't look?
I think you can. I think you really can, because I think there's some stuff in here that's really solid. I think the intro conclusion obviously keep. And I think the way that you're leading into your paragraphs, even though you could maybe shorten them just a tad, I would work from it. Well, I'll let you decide. Like if you feel like looking at it and you're like, okay, I want to trim this to like, let's say your lead in is like 40 words and you're like, okay, I want to trim this by half. Then you might decide, okay, I know that I want to like say something about Imperial Valley Dunes, and I know I want to connect to curiosity. So, okay, I think if I look at that, I'm just going to be like, sort of stuck in the same language. So I want to not look at it. Whereas maybe you look at the next one and you're like, you know what, I think this one's pretty good. I just want to like trim a little bit. So it's kind of up to you. I think that when it comes to for instance, the first body paragraph where you mentioned curiosity, you have so many other values that you mentioned in there. I think it'll actually be easier to not look at all those values and try to weave them in. I think it'll be easier for you for that second part of the paragraph to not look. But rather than not look at it, I'm going to say only look if you feel like it's going to really help you write it. If you find yourself getting too bogged down in the way that you phrased it or too attached to it, then that's when you go, okay, I need to stop looking at it.
Okay, perfect. And then, what you said about it doesn't really make it clear, the road trips. I think the only place where I mentioned that was the intro. Like in this one sentence, I said we did road trips and even slept in our car. And I think that would even be better because I can cut that part out of the intro and then save words too. So I think that could really work.
Yeah, I think that can work. Play with the phrasing, because I think that when you read that sentence to me, I don't exactly think, oh, that's exactly the thing of how it connects to your family. But so in other words, I wouldn't just like copy and paste it, but I would play with that essence.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. How does this feel?
Feels good. I think I know like exactly what to work on. So.
All right. Awesome. I'm excited to see where this goes. Yeah, I'd say just email me when you're ready and we'll do it again.
Okay. I think I'll be faster on this one because I like know what to do.
Okay. Awesome. Hey friends, thanks as ever for listening in. You'll find the show notes at collegeessayguy.com/podcast. And if you're interested in new content every week from College Essay Guy, check out our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that and turn on notifications. And we post a video there usually once or twice a week, including the recordings from our webinars. All right, that's it. Be well and stay curious.